Arrête de râler, Robert. Did you know that the letter R is the consonant that is the most used in French? That's why it's everywhere and also why it's very important to be able to pronounce it. Je m'appelle Caroline and welcome to the second episode of the French Blabla podcast, Speak Like a Native. I know a lot of you don't think it's charming. You often have the feeling you're going to gag a little when you try to say it. I always tell my students that if you feel like vomiting a bit, then you're on your path to a perfect R. In reality, this sound isn't as harsh as it seems, and learners tend to over-exaggerate when pronouncing it. Exaggerating it can be helpful when you have no clue how to produce it, but once you get it, you can tone it down and turn it into a slight friction. The problem with the R is that its difficulty lies within its position. That's why sometimes you can do it perfectly, and some other times your Frenchy R turns back into your American or Spanish R. In the first part of this episode, we will see some tricks on how to produce this sound. Then we will work on the different position of the R. Before starting, I'd like to give a shout out to one of my listeners, George, who wrote to me such a sweet feedback. I'm sure you will find this episode useful. One important thing to produce the French R is to know where it comes from. Your usual R is higher in the throat than our R. To find it, try to pronounce the word koala or the word cup. At the beginning of the word, your throat should get blocked and air cannot pass. The place where your throat is clenched is where the French R will be born. For the men, it should be in the area of your Adam's apple. Okay, now that you know where the sound will come from, it's time to learn what to do with your tongue. If you speak English or Spanish, when you pronounce your R, it tends to go up in your mouth and it can even touch your palate. I'm sorry to tell you that you will have to tame your tongue here. You cannot let it move freely in your mouth. It should rest at the bottom of your mouth and stand still. If your tongue is really too misbehaved, block it with your finger or a spoon. You can also try to touch the back of your lower teeth with the tip of your tongue. The only movement that is allowed is for the back of your tongue to go backwards and to almost touch the uvula. This will help produce our dreadful R. I suggest you train a little before moving to the next step of our perfect French sound. We know where the sound will come from, we know what to do with our tongue, let's move on to the creation of the sound now. To create our R, we will start with the H sound, like in English. While blocking your throat and putting your tongue close to the uvula, you will try to pronounce the H sound. You should end up with a light friction. Try to pronounce the word how. You should hear something that sounds like rauw. You may not manage to create a R on the first attempt, but don't give up and try again and again. Practice makes perfect. Remember that you don't need to exaggerate. A slight friction will be enough to form a beautiful sound. I told you before in this episode that this R is tough because of its position in a word. We will start with the easiest, that is to say, the R that ends a word. For example, por. The R will make the vowel a bit longer. Let me pronounce it again. Por. Por. It's paramount here that your tongue stays behind your lower teeth. The friction should be very delicate, like a breath. Don't go crazy on me, please. You don't need to stick the back of your tongue on the uvula and completely block your throat. Here we have a gentle R, like a purr, so moving your tongue backwards a bit will be enough. A little exercise for you to try before moving on to the next position. You will pronounce all the French vowels and add R at the end. Let's start. Repeat after me. Ach, ir, or, ur, Now for the second position, it's the R followed by a consonant. For example, porte. The R here is a bit stronger. Let's compare the two words and try to feel the different intensity. Por, porte. Let me repeat them again. Por, porte. In our new position, you will need to move the back of your tongue more backwards than in our previous position. If you have problems pronouncing the R and then directly another consonant, a tip I can give you is to add a E sound between the two consonants. It would become porteux. First, try to repeat with this added sound, then little by little, try to make it shorter and shorter until you don't need it anymore to pronounce porte. To train your pronunciation more, you can create your own combination. It's not really important if it has meaning or not. When you learn an instrument, you need to do a lot of drills before being able to play the whole piece of music. It's the same here. Before being able to pronounce the R perfectly in a sentence, you need to do a bit of gymnastic. So, how do you create your personalized drills? It's very easy. You choose a vowel, like O or A, then you add your R, then a consonant. For example, harpe, orde, orbe. The next step will be to add another vowel at the end of our drill, so that the R isn't in the final syllable. As you may know, in French, the stress is always on the last syllable of a word or of a rhythmic group, and it's pronounced a bit longer than the other syllables. The trick here is not to make the syllable where the R is longer. All the syllables should have the same length, and the R shouldn't be stressed. You will need to pronounce a short and light R. Let's compare two drills, one where the R is stressed and one with our new position. Harpe, harpie. Orde, ordi. Orbe, orbi. Harpe, harpie. Orde, ordi. Orbe, orbi. I hope you hear that the first syllable in our new position is shorter. The last position I'd like to talk about is the most difficult one. That is to say, the R after a consonant. For example, trop, cro, bro. The R here is quite strong and will slightly change in intensity if the consonant is voiced, like in bro. I really insist that you try this combination only after you train the previous ones. Oh my gosh, that was a lot of R for one day. Try to do the exercises and tell me if it helped. Which position of the R is the most difficult to you? I would love to hear about it. Leave a comment on today's episode's page on French Blabla website. If today's show was helpful to you, I would love you to return the favor by leaving a review on iTunes. I'm Caroline, and thanks for spending some time with me today. À très vite! Très vite!